Aloha and welcome to Bamboo and Tea with Dr. Alana Coffee. Today I'm having a conversation with really a bright, fresh young mind. She just recently got her license in clinical psychology and she has joined, I'm so excited, she's joined us here at the Honolulu Psychology Collective. And this is Xenia Ewing. Dr. Ewing, hello, hello.
Hi.
And
Thanks
welcome.
For having me.
Oh, so here we are. I love it. We're just in casual clothes, drinking champagne out of flutes, in celebration for that license. Congratulations. It's a lot of work.
It definitely took longer than I thought, too. People were always like, oh, yeah, you get all your stuff done, and it's a lot of waiting. And I didn't believe them, and they were right.
Oh.
They were absolutely right. It took 6 months from when I first applied until I got licensed.
Oh, that's fast.
I know. You told me that was fast, and I was
fast.
like, nah.
Yeah. I mean, at every step of the process, right, from undergraduate, did you go straight into master's program or straight into doctorate?
I went straight into master's, and then they made us wait a year to take a comprehensive exams, and then we got to go in the doctorate.
Right.
So.
And then how long was your doctorate?
So with the master's, it was 6 years. Originally would have been 5 if we hadn't been delayed, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay, so we were talking about the time it takes to get these doctorates in psychology or really in any field, whether it's a Juris Doctor, an MD, dental school. The processes take a long time. So for you, my question was, did you go from undergraduate? Yeah, what was that like? What did you do?
So I went straight from undergraduate into the Hawaii School of Professional Psychology here. At the time, it was with Argosy, which you may be aware closed.
Oh,
that was super exciting. It was the best. I don't recommend that.
Sarcasm.
Yeah. So I got accepted to the master's program first. And typically what happens is you do that, you roll into the PsyD program, and the whole process is 5 years. But they decided that we had to wait an extra year when we got in the PsyD program to take our comprehensive exams. So it added an extra year. Which worked out for me because then that year that I had extra gap before my internship was when Argosy closed, and all I had to do was work on my dissertation.
Oh.
So it was so less stressful for me because it was like, all I have to do is get that signed. They actually sent all my paperwork, so I just had to defend as fast as possible.
Right.
But then we got picked up by Chaminade 11 days later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So our program had been, heard the signs and was, shopping us around. So a week and a half, and then we picked up again.
So on your diploma, is it Chaminade or Argosy?
My master's is Argosy, and my doctorate is Chaminade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun. My master's is Chaminade, and my doctorate's UH. Right? Chaminade features both of our careers, so that's really cool.
Yeah.
And so when was that? Because this is what?
When did I graduate, or when did I?
When did you finally get done?
2020.
Congratulations.
So my degree was conferred October 1st, 2020.
And then there's the 2 years of, work in the community and in the field, and then license.
Yeah, so it was a year of postdoc, and then it took half a year to get license, and then took a while for insurance credentialing to come through.
That's right. That's right. And now you are practicing full-time psychologist.
Yes.
What's that like?
Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I'm a doctor. What? 10 extra years of school, and I get to do things I love doing. I love therapy. Yeah. I'm also trained in assessments, and I do find that fulfilling to find out things for people, give them some answers to questions.
Yes.
But I love therapy. Getting to witness people's stories and help them figure things out and watching them grow is just so awesome and humbling. I love it.
It is humbling, isn't it? I find it to be an honor.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's really, watching their lives really transform.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And it's not even so much that we necessarily do it. It's just we get to be a witness while it's happening. It's
they do all the hard stuff.
They do all the hard work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad. Thank you for your patience, getting to that because it is not straightforward. And I think a lot of people don't understand. Just for our viewers, to be a practicing psychologist or any kind of therapist, you need a license, and the licenses are at the master's level and at the doctorate level. The master's level is 2 years past a bachelor's degree, and the doctorate can be so many more years above that, beyond that bachelor's. So just so that people understand that we go through a lot of schooling,
for sure,
and they may not know that. And one of the reasons for that, so that we can be do no harm to our patients.
Right.
They come to us with a lot of vulnerability, for example,
sure.
right? So, gosh, well, what else? When I first met you, you had this little bird on your shoulder. I was like, are you going to bring Zephyr?
I thought about it. I didn't ask. And I was like, it's probably not a good idea for her first time in a new space. And I don't have her harness trained yet.
Right.
So I was like, I don't know. I don't know if you have pets either, because she's so afraid of dogs. But yeah, so I was bringing Zephyr with me to my workplace when I was working doing assessments, and she was such a great help for the kids. Because a lot of times parents don't think, like, oh, I need to prepare my kid. Like, we're not going to go get shots.
Right.
It's not like the medical doctor. So like, oh yeah, we're going to the doctors, and the kid's like, I'm going with you. Mm-hmm. You're going to be shots. This is terrible. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, oh, you want to meet my bird? Yes. And like, they love birds. Like, even the little guys who are like actually scared of her and won't get anywhere near her want to see her. Yeah. So it was really great to have her there. Like, bring her out sometimes. Like, oh, Zephyr really wants you to come back. Or like sometimes it'll be like, oh, Zephyr really wants to know the answer to this. Can you tell Zephyr the answer? And they'll do things.
They really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, I think the older, more rigid forms of psychology would be like, oh, you can't do that. But what we know about children is that sometimes we need a bridge, we need a scaffold. And tell people, what is Zephyr? A cockatiel.
Cockatiel, yes.
Yeah. So about
like yay big.
And so much personality in such a little, right? Yeah. So I do have 2 dogs. You hear the yipping. That's because they want to be here and they can't. And then there's a cat and numerous chickens. And so when I do these interviews, I like to do them as natural as possible, in nature as possible. So there's all kinds of ambient noise. So apologies in advance, audience. You can hear motorcycles and planes and trains. So it's all going on.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess next time I'll make sure I'll have Zephyr harness trained, and we'll have him just hang out.
What does it mean to be harness trained?
So you can get little birdie harnesses. So it goes around their chest and their back so that they can still flap their wings, but it keeps them from just flying places. Zephyr is very easily startled and will panic fly.
Yes.
So unfortunately, she'd like fly into your window or fly into the camera, and we don't really need that. She doesn't need that. So it's just kind of to keep her from like flying off into harm or getting out somewhere. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
I mean, with telehealth, I've met so many pets. I mean, we should talk a little bit about telehealth. But I actually had one of my patients. She has birds, and sure enough, it ran into the window, and she went and got it and made sure it was fine. It was fine. Yeah. But you're right.
It's always like, is this the time
did you
where
break
it's
yourself?
Be fine? Yeah.
So you're telehealth.
I
know I'm fully telehealth
Same.
too. Yeah. How's that going? Because I know you work with a lot of young ones. So how's that going?
Not too young. So my youngest is 14, so 14 and up. I don't have the skills to do telehealth with younger than that very well, especially like little 8-year-olds and younger. Like, I can't keep their attention. I think that's more of a me thing than it is a failing with telehealth. Like, I know some people who do amazing work with children over telehealth. That is not me.
Shorter sessions and Zephyr.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Zephyr.
You're halfway there.
Yeah. So Zephyr has a standoff to the side, and she's got a ladder so she can like walk over. Because I sit on the floor and be on my like back pillow and then come hang out. So usually she hides and like doesn't really do anything. She seems to have picked up on when I'm actually on call, so she won't interrupt. But every Tuesday, my 5 p.m. client, she's like, I need to go to bed. What are you doing? Why aren't you putting me in bed? And I'm like, ma'am, you could climb over here, and you got another ladder up to your cage. You don't need to do this. But it's just that client.
She's scolding Zephyr, not the client.
Right.
Yeah. Ma'am, you need to go to bed. We don't talk to our patients like that, even though
Typically
sometimes
not,
we want to. Just for clarification.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So Xenia, I also teased you the first time. I'm like, you mean like Princess Warrior? So is that right? No.
So I am actually 2 years older than that show. And she doesn't have an I in her name. So I grew up with a lot of Princess Warrior jokes.
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. For a long time, only my godfather was allowed to actually say that. Everyone else, I'd get mad. I'd be like, there's an I in my name. She didn't spell her name right. That's not me. And so actually in high school, I had one friend in band who knew how to make her war cry. So like he'd see me from across campus and would just be like, Xenia! And then I can't do it. And it would just be super loud. And everybody would be like, what?
Oh my, yeah. I love it. You're 2 years older than Xenia, Princess Warrior. That was just like yesterday.
I know, right?
Yeah. Good for you. Now that okay. All right. Yeah. So, are you native to Hawaii?
No, I'm originally from Chicago area of Illinois.
Okay.
My dad at the time was working in Nebraska, and he didn't like that he wasn't seeing me during the week. So we moved to Nebraska. But my mom got a job in Oklahoma, so it was the same issue. So I moved to Oklahoma, and then my dad felt led for us to move out here. So then we moved out here. That was a bit rough. My mom stayed behind because she had a job, making sure that he had a job, trying to find her a job. I was an angry, awful child until she showed up.
I was an angry, awful teen. Okay, nice to meet you.
13 was awful, but that was later. So it was like 8. I was not a great 8-year-old because I missed my mom. I was like, why isn't she here? Wasn't buying any of the reasons. I was like, Dad, you don't do anything the same way Mom does.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, right?
For dads.
Yeah, so she joined us a few months after. I think like December. We came out in July. We lived here for like 22 years now. Wow. Long time.
Dating yourself or getting closer.
Before I do that, I'm really excited about my licensure number. I'm psychologist number 1992. I was born in 92.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So mine's like 1499. I feel like I was born then, but I wasn't.
We look great for that.
I know, right? We're supposed to be serious.
I don't know. This is kind of how I show up to sessions with people too, right? Like I'm just your authentic self. Yeah. And just make space for people. And sometimes it is about making dumb jokes about things or being like, yeah, let's take a moment to look at the bird, see what she's doing.
You know what? I'm so glad you said that because let's demystify it. There's I think less and less, recently, but people have had misconceptions about what they were going to experience when they got to our desk or our screen or our panel, and we're just folks, right? And some of us are more playful than others, and I think I'm very playful because I think life's already serious enough. Yeah. So we can lighten it up a little, but I'm so glad that you said that.
Yeah, this is about as fancy as I get for telehealth too. Occasionally I'll have like fancier shirts, but it's kind of what I'm feeling. Yeah.
I mean, because we're people, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I during the pandemic, because we were in telehealth, I just wore yoga pants and sorry everybody, but but I'd have like this like chiffon blouse, right? And then like shorts, and I think I'm not the only person that did that. Not. So it's we're finding our way.
Definitely.
And so you're many of us psychologists and counselors have had offices, brick and mortar offices, and we've had to transform into telehealth. Yeah. You're starting, that's Vinny, by the way. Sorry about the ambient dog. Unhappy Chihuahua. But you're starting your career already just right out of the gate in telehealth. Yeah. How is that?
It's a little bit strange. Sometimes I'm like, I wish everyone had access to internet the same quality. Because occasionally, like, I'll have some people be like, oh, wait, I gotta get on my phone. Or they're like, oh, let me drive somewhere else in the parking lot because I need better reception. And it'd be nice to not have some of those difficulties. But also, like, it's really great because I have a bunch of clients on Maui and there's no way I'd be able to see them. Right. I'm not going to fly out to Maui just to see people. Like, that's not practical for me. And it doesn't make sense to demand they come here for services either.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So helpful. Yeah. And there's just a few times where I'm like, this could be more convenient, but it's okay. But I'm like, but it already is super convenient. Like, we're okay. Because there's also always audio, right? I can call people. Right. So there's I guess I've gotten spoiled.
And, I'm glad, again, that you mentioned the neighboring islands, because even on Oahu, where we are, there are still places it's very difficult for people to get into the office. There's traffic, there's parking, there's time. Yeah. Like right now, someone could take a lunch break and see us and get back to work as opposed to having to take a half a day off. So this telehealth it's got its benefits.
For sure. Yeah. And you think about like with teens, they have so many activities they want to do. Yes. And it's hard to ask them to like sacrifice some of that to take care of their mental health. Right. Teens don't always have that buy-in. Yeah. And
they already don't have the buy-in, much less you want me to do what? Yeah, skip out on volleyball lessons or class. Yeah. But very nice. Okay, so what else? I did want to. You're one of the most conscientious clinicians. You got. I don't know if it's. I don't want to call it. I think you've just got a very intact sense of justice, and I just kind of want to invite you to voice some of the things that are on your mind that's important to you right now, because I think and I don't really want to make it a generational thing, but I do, in some little bit, think a certain percentage of it is generational. But younger clinicians are really taking on some very strong and serious topics. You're just mindful of it. And so I just want to give you a little bit of time to voice something. It's important to you.
Okay, well, thank you. So I guess key on my mind at the moment, especially since we've been getting a lot of those emails from Psychological Association, is about telehealth protections. Because as we know, if Medicare doesn't have it, tends to be private insurances don't also allow those. So I actually emailed and gotten a very nice email back from our Senator Schatz about what things he's been doing.
So responsive.
I know. Yeah, and like some of the things and he even mentioned things that I hadn't really thought about. It was like, yeah, we need those too. So I'm really glad that that's going on. It looks like those are going to stay.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. What did you do? You saw a problem and you did what? You called who?
I emailed my senators.
Wow. I mean, that's something that all of us citizens have a right to do. We have access to do, but you were empowered to do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I'm not sure who it is that organized that one in particular, but it was just like kind of a form thing. So there's actually a site you can go to, which I don't remember what it is, where you can just write out your message, and then you just put where your address is, and they email your senators or representatives automatically.
Yes.
So it's very...
I think the listserv has some of that happens.
For sure.
Hawaii Psychological Association listserv. Right. So just for the listener, because we use a lot of language that...
Yes. I try to remember that, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I didn't define that first.
All right. I do it too. So, but good for you to just reach out straight to the senator.
Yeah.
Right. And what do you mean when you say telehealth protections? What does that mean? Yeah. Because again, I'm not so sure everybody knows what that's about.
So, because of an emergency order, right, that started off so that everyone could get telehealth services, you didn't have to actually come in and see your provider at least once within 6 months of your first visit, I believe. Don't quote me on that. So, the concern is that since a lot of the emergency stuff has passed, that those protections will go away, and people in Maui shouldn't have to fly here for a visit to be able to keep seeing me online.
Yes.
That's not appropriate, and that's not affordable for everyone. Like, I know it's not the greatest example because inter-island travel here is sometimes cheap, but not everybody can afford like $80 or whatever, you know? And like that's like kind of as cheap as it gets sometimes.
Yes, yes.
So concerns about that, and then concerns about audio-only sessions.
Yes.
Sometimes people don't have access to reliable internet for video, or they don't have a device that they can do video calls on. So making sure that people can still call their clinicians and talk on the phone and have that covered.
Yes.
That one's been a fight, I think, even from the beginning of COVID to have just audio only. So making sure that we continue to have those going forward, because we really need to be more mindful of people who are differently abled.
Yes. Because,
like, does a blind person really need to be able on a camera to see me?
I mean, my goodness, right? Yeah.
Right? Like, why force them to do that when that's not even helpful?
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, what else is on your mind?
Well, since you've invited me to do that talk in April, asexuality is a lot on my mind at the moment. There's a lot of conversations about LGBT stuff in general, and a lot of times asexuality gets ignored. People are like, oh, you can pass as straight, so you don't need any of these things, or like you don't need these protections. There's even debate over whether or not some of the ADA protections for LGBT issues includes asexuality or not. So depending, people can still get fired for that. It's not as frequent, and like I don't even know if we have numbers on it. I just don't know if anyone researches that.
Okay, hold on, Dr. Ewing. What sexuality?
Asexuality.
Yeah, what is that?
So
you mean like asexual person? Yeah, right?
Yeah, right. Okay.
I mean, I think that's how much people don't really know about it. Yeah, so, I didn't on it, to be perfectly honest. But
yeah, so asexuality is like kind of a lack of sexual interest, and it's hard to define an absence of something. Right? It's like if I'm like, oh, you're bisexual, like you're interested in both genders or all genders, depending on how we're defining it. Like homosexual, like people of the opposite sex or gender. Whereas asexual is like, I don't really care about sex. And so within that, people can be sex positive, so like they can still enjoy having sex, but just not care who they're having it with necessarily based on parts. Might just be like an emotional connection is what makes that worth it to them. But they might not be sex positive and just don't want to have sex at all.
Right.
And it's hard to conceptualize that if you don't live it. Because how do you explain an absence of something?
You know, one of my patients who was very patient and to help me explain some of this, I've done some reading since then, but described it as not wanting to be pathologized for not having,
Yes.
For that. It's like, there's nothing the matter with me. I just,
right.
That's just not what's happening for me. It's not my orientation.
Right. Yeah. It's not like a lack of drive. So it's not like I am heterosexual, but my sex drive isn't where I want it to be or need it to be.
Right. That's a whole different conversation.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think actually some people have, as an asexual person, taken some of those drugs to increase libido, and we're like, this is really weird, and I still not attracted to anybody, and I don't. How do you guys function?
Yeah. Right. So if someone just is oriented to not be sexual or be feeling sexual, and then they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh my gosh, you're having an erectile dysfunction. Here's some Viagra," and then that person has, the response that Viagra is supposed to elicit, and then they're like, "Oh, this isn't what I want because I'm not sexual, I'm asexual." Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, there's been some movement in orgasm medication for women, which is exciting because women deserve to have pleasure just as much as men.
No, just kidding. We're grown.
Yeah. So some people have taken that and been like, this is really weird. I don't know how I feel about that. But it is hard at times because not everybody knows that that's a label you can use in your life. And so they're like, go to a doctor and you trust your doctor. And the doctor's like, oh, okay, well, you have these issues. So it must be this condition. So take these pills. And people don't always know there are other ways to do it.
So I have a question, and I haven't been able to get the answer in my own research. So is it something that comes and goes, or it is a stable condition?
Great question.
Yeah.
So sexuality in general is a spectrum, and it can fluctuate depending on where you are in life. So kind of what you're hinting at is demisexual, which is sort of like in between asexual and allosexual. Allosexual is anyone who is interested in having sex, not cared about orientation, which is sort of the opposite of asexual, because some people are like, oh, opposite asexual is bisexual. Not really, because that's different. Yeah. I lost my thought.
How do you know all this? Sorry.
So I guess the short answer is I went to McAllister College in St. Paul, Minnesota, and they're very concerned about social justice and making sure we are aware of things and creating a safe space. So there's a lot of opportunities to learn about these things and explore them. I also had a couple of friends who were in human sexuality studies, and we would just talk about stuff all the time.
Wow. And so what is the best way to bring it up? Because I think there's people who are not versed in it and they're scared to offend. So they don't want to even bring it up. The difference even between orientation and just not knowing the language. Even I don't have fluid with the language. It's just not what we grew up with. So we're having to learn it as old people, 1499 people. So any suggestions for somebody that does not know but wants to, how to bring it up without being offensive?
So it's kind of a tricky question. So in there's kind of two issues. Because one is do you ask the minority group to define their experiences for the majority group when there is the internet? And you can Google all of your dumb questions however you want. The internet's not going to judge you, right? Your Google's not going to be like, oh, you typed that search in wrong.
So first, do some research.
Yeah, find out some of the basic questions, because it can be scary to ask people these things, and sometimes people don't feel safe answering your questions
because they're not sure what is the intention.
Right.
Why are you asking me? Are you asking to know and understand? Or are you asking to judge?
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes, unfortunately, with asexuality, people will have a reaction like, "Oh, well, you just haven't had sex with the right person."
Oh.
Yeah. And that's not. Great. And so then it gets into okay, if I'm smaller than you and I have less physical ability than you, are you going to try to give me a corrective sex experience that I don't want?
That's horrifying, actually, to think about. Yeah.
So it's not always safe to answer those questions.
Wow. So people are still really protective.
Yes.
Yeah. Understandably.
Yeah, we have made some strides forward, and there are still a lot of spaces that are unsafe if you're not straight white man, basically.
And we love them too, but that's not what this is about.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so you're going to do a talk on this.
I am.
I'm so excited. I am so excited. Always anxious to learn more, eager to learn more, and especially in safe spaces. We will post information for that talk at the end of this presentation. And, we're supposed to keep these short, but we could go on and on, but we shouldn't. We could, but we should not.
Well, it's not a should. We don't have to feel bad or feel any shame.
God, look at that. See? This is why we have... feel better already. But any last words that you want to just kind of say this morning? And we're going to wrap up our conversation, which I'm delighted to have had the time with you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. This has been a very nice, relaxing conversation.
Oh, yeah. And informative, really. Thank you for just being so fluent and free and safe to say what you need to say.
Thanks for creating the space for that.
Yeah. And thanks for joining HPC. Thank you. Dr. Ewing, cheers. Thank you for joining us. Bamboo and tea. Aloha.